And instead of hating parts of myself or hiding parts of myself in social situations or in professional situations, specifically professional situations, I could just be really open, transparent, and loving. And this is something I've actually found, is that when I sit in front of a room full of people and I am radically transparent, I'm very, very open. Craig talked on my podcast earlier, is that when I'm radically transparent, it models a pathway for people to see it, that they can do it too.
Yeah.
And I think not a lot of people get exposure to that. It's like, look at this guy. I see him being so open, and I really see that as strength, but yeah, I see it as weakness in myself. I've got to keep all these things hidden. So as soon as I started getting more people coming up to me saying, hey, listen, thank you so much for sharing in that way. I love that. They would use the word love. I was like, oh my gosh, actually maybe love is the best vehicle for my kind of, my almost like what got you here, what won't get you there. Fear got me to where I was, but love's going to get me to where I want to be.
So today I'm with Coach Ben Owen, who's a good friend of mine. He's also a coach that continues to impress me. Every time I spend time with him, he blows me away, not only by his knowledge, and I won't tell you how much he's invested in his knowledge over the last few years, you'll be blown away, but also his impact that he's having in the world, and also his desire to transform. He's recently a father, which has changed him dramatically. We can touch on that. But we're going to be talking specifically about self-sabotage, because Ben was a self-sabotager. And I know many of you might be self-sabotagers. And I think that Ben's approach to it and his stories around how he's transcended those old patterns of self-sabotage and procrastination would benefit all of you. Ben, so good to get you on the pod, mate.
Thank you very much, and just an enormous amount of gratitude. I said this to you yesterday, Craig. I have multiple times a year when I'm like, do you know what? I'm really grateful for Greg White. I did your retreat. Well, I turned 30 and my life turned upside down. And it's, do you know what? We talk about this. It wasn't just the investment in that retreat. It's been the change in my trajectory after doing that, which has been the most valuable thing. And I think sometimes as coaches, we always think about the money that we spend on the coach that, in that retreat. I came and spent 7 days with you.
Yeah.
But it's been that 7+ years that it's been valuable in my life. And sometimes that gratitude comes from, oh my gosh, I would never have known that or felt like that or understood that. And I'm often in rooms talking about things that I learned even on that retreat, or just what's come from that. And it's still valuable now. And people are like, this blows my mind. Oh my gosh, this is so helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, really grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I'm fascinated with human transformation. It's the essence of this podcast. The reason I'm fascinated with it is because I want people to know that, when you put the work in, you can transform. We can transcend some of the old patterns that we downloaded from our parents and so on in our ancestry. And we're so blessed to live in this healing revolution that we live in now. And when we put the effort in, we can transform. Magic can happen. And I've seen a huge transformation in you. In my perception, I've seen the transformation from a young man that was absolutely driven, never stopped. I'm guessing you used to whip yourself with a whip when you got home, to someone that is radiating love, really, and step into the responsibility of being a husband. I know you had some rocky times and you've done your work there. You've stepped into the responsibility of fatherhood. And I'm fascinated to know about that transformation and also how it's changed the way you coach. Where did that drive come from, and weave it into self-sabotage, and we can go off on that tangent for a while.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you're absolutely right. I was an elite performer. I was an elite runner. And I used to drive myself with fear and, and acceptance, that desire for acceptance from my dad. I always wanted my dad to come and watch me and be proud of me.
Yeah.
And he was anyway. He always was proud of me. And I just wanted that. And then because he wasn't in the house, and he was a huge driver. And I took that into every arena. I just used to be so on it all the time. And I was the successful guy who wanted to go to work at 6 a.m., come home at 9 p.m. And that messed up my first marriage. You know,
Yeah.
it was the thing that caused the problems in my life
Mm.
at that point. And actually, when I went through my early 30s, one of the big things I went to do deep work around was I wanted to get to the point where I met Poppy, my now wife. I'd met her. I wanted to get back to the point where I could ask her to marry me and actually wanted to do it for me as well as her. Do you get what I mean? I was like, because it was in my psyche, I was like, don't do that again. Marriage is not a good idea. It's really not going to be helpful for you. But I'm like, I'd found the perfect partner. She wanted it and I didn't. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go and work on this. And I got to that point and I remember telling my men's group about that. I'm ready. That was really big.
Nice.
But the big thing that I think self-sabotage came from is that I never referred to myself as someone who self-sabotaged. I was like, I'm not someone who self-sabotaged. I'm a successful guy. I read success books and personal development books and human transformation books. I'm all about success and progress. I'm not someone who would willingly mess up my life, fuck up my life. It was something that I would not have said that about myself. And I had it pointed to me one day. He was like, Ben, do you realise you self-sabotage? I was like, no, I don't. And my coach at the time said, go and read this book. And what I realised that...
What was the book, Ben?
It was The Tools. Yeah, it was The Tools in Coming Alive by Phil Stutz.
You told me about that,
Yeah, it's a great book. And you can watch the Stutz documentary on Netflix. And I realised that conscious self-sabotage, what we often think, where we just, we do things that stop us from moving forward consciously, it happens. But the more sinister self-sabotage, especially for men, and I understand it really well in men, is that in the micro moments where we most need to move forwards, we do something that takes away our state or our attention or our focus. Now, I gave you an example before, which was, I'm just about to go and write my sales page, or I'm just about to go and write my book, and I get this overwhelming desire to go and watch pornography. And all I can see is I've got to go and have a wank. I've got to go and watch some porn, and I can't even see beyond that. I can't even think of doing any more work until I satiate that urge.
Like a feeling of being hijacked.
Yeah. And it wasn't just pornography. It was, I've got to go and make a coffee. I've got to go and do the hoovering. It could be anything for you. It's like, could be, I need to go and eat. I need to go and trade. And I was listening to guys for a long time. It's like, I can't get, and it's impulse control. And I was like, what? So impulse is a weapon of self-sabotage. And I was like, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
And that was me, because I could have even self-diagnosed with ADHD, as so many people do. I sit down, I go to work, and all of a sudden my attention's gone, or fractured into tiny little pieces, so I can't move forwards. And I was like, no way is that self-sabotage. And then as I started to understand it and the landscape a little bit more and the symptoms, I was like, there would be other times where I would stand there doing the dishes and someone would pop into my head. And I'd be like, that fucking idiot. I can't believe he did that to me. Or, and all of a sudden I'd go from a really normal state where I'm doing the dishes thinking about my day to all of a sudden I'm thinking and ruminating about some nasty event or something someone might do in the future. And I'd go from a growth state to a contracted, rageful state. And then if I was to go and sit down and do work or create, I'm not in the right place, so I can't move forwards. And I started to see all these little places where self-sabotage was starting to consume me. And I realised that around 80% of my working week was consumed by this evil force that was taking away my ability to move forwards. And as soon as I started to spot that in myself, I started to do work on it. And that, the first point of it is starting to see it. And, maybe as I was talking, you might be able to spot it. And if you're listening, you might be able to spot that as well. And there's loads of these symptoms. I can keep going if you want.
I spotted in you the self-whip. That, that aspect of self-sabotage.
Yeah, I used to give myself such a hard time if I didn't win,
if you didn't perform, right?
perform. Yeah, it was which is interesting because, like you said, and when you were introducing me at the start, now I am the absolute opposite of that. I'm like, well done, mate. You did a great job and you did your best.
Mm.
And I'm not that person anymore, and which is great for my leadership as well because I remember there was I had a family business. You know, I had my brother worked for me. I had my partner, my wife's brother Alex working for me, and my cousin working for me. So I was building a family business, and I also wanted them to experience becoming better in leadership, and we had a CFO come and work with us. We had this financial meeting every single quarter and every single month, and we all sat in this very serious financial meeting. My brother came on one day, and within about 20 minutes, I looked on the Zoom and I could see my brother sat there snoring, and I was like, and the whip in me
Yeah.
was like, you know, it was
You cheeky bastard.
I can't believe you've done this. You've fallen asleep on the finance meeting. It's how embarrassing. And I actually just this because I was like nearly 30, 31, 32, and I said to him, well done on making the meeting, mate. You did a really good job. You know, maybe stay awake next time. But I think what happened is I softened and I led much stronger, you know, from a much better place. And people still changed. And what I realised, especially with the whip, is I didn't need to be the hammer all the time. I could get behaviour change with being soft and loving as well. So yeah, great observation.
So you're really into self-development, self-actualization. I guess if you gave me the money that you spent on self-development, I could probably buy a mansion in London, couldn't I?
You absolutely could, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like I said, every time I meet you, there's something I learn from you. You're like this fountain of knowledge. Making that shift from self-sabotage to more in alignment with liking yourself and having a more loving relationship with yourself and accepting all parts of yourself. What have you done to help you with that? How have you gone from the realization through a lot of different modalities and ways of looking at yourself to where you're at now? Fill the gap.
Oh, the macro view of that is fear to love. I was deeply fearful. I was fearful of not being good enough, fearful of not being the best, fearful of having situations where I didn't have the knowledge. And I remember even when we on your retreat. So actually, my first rodeo with Craig in a professional sense was when I went on your retreat. And there's something that you kind of gave me the acknowledgement with, and it was like I had a shame-based driver to learn enough because I didn't feel enough. I was like, courses here,
Yeah.
you know, masters here, go on this course. I constantly had to know it because one day someone was going to say you're not enough, you don't know enough.
You're filling your head up.
Oh my gosh, I was so full. I was creatively constipated because I had so much incoming stuff I couldn't output. You know, and you like get so stuck because you're taking in all the time, and it was fear. It was driving. It was fear that I wasn't gonna. And I realised that a lot of the patterns from my parents was fear. You know, my mum's family, especially my grandma. You know, very fearful woman. She went to bed at 40 and kind of never really got out. And there's fear. There's so much fear in the patterning. And then, and I think what happened when I got to like 34, 35, I just really had this awakening to love as a great force for leadership and self-development, and actually just being okay with that. I think one of the big awakenings I had was it was okay to be extremely loving and still get the job done.
Yeah.
And instead of hating parts of myself or hiding parts of myself in social situations or in professional situations, specifically professional situations, I could just be really open, transparent, and loving. And this is something I've actually found is that when I sit in front of a room full of people and I am radically transparent, I'm very, very open. You know, Craig talked on my podcast earlier. Is that when I'm radically transparent, it models a pathway for people to see it, that they can do it too.
Yeah.
And I think not a lot of people get exposure to that. It's like, look at this guy. I see him being so open. and I really see that as strength, but yeah, I see it as weakness in myself. You know, I've got to keep all these things hidden. So as soon as I started getting more people coming up to me saying, "Hey, listen, like, you know, thank you so much for sharing in that way. I love that." They would use the word love. I was like, "Oh my gosh, actually, maybe love is the best vehicle for my kind of, you know, my almost like what got you here, what won't get you there. Fear got me to where I was,
Yeah, yeah.
but love's going to get me to where I want to be."
So it's been a journey towards love, yeah.
Unbelievably, and becoming a father was just
Yeah.
a real kind of awakening again. It's like there's moments of it's interesting. Like when you come from a training background, is that when you have a capacity to tolerate stress in the gym, you're training to get a bigger capacity. That's kind of what you're doing. And I think that until I had kids, I had only a certain capacity for love. And what having kids has done for me is it's grown my cup.
Amazing.
You know, it's my ability to
Yeah.
receive love and to give love has just become exponentially bigger. And that's why I've probably gone quite soft.
Yeah.
But what I do actually, I think there's a distinction. Is like I've softened my front, but I'm more driven. You know, strong spine.
Yeah.
I know exactly. I'm rooted in. My boundaries are better.
Yeah.
My drive is better, but I'm soft on the front. You know, I let people be who they need to be.
I love how fatherhood has changed you, and I want to come back to that. Rewind 8 years ago when you came on my 5-day retreat. What modalities, what practices did we do on that retreat that were enlightening to you and helped you to open up a little bit more, get out your head, feel more in your body, and allow yourself to receive more love?
Yeah, that was interesting. Kind of the journey to that. I want to tell a little bit of a story actually. That I was in a really bad place. I had a 40 grand VAT bill that was due. I hadn't accounted for my VAT, and I'd just broken through a ceiling in business, which is going through the VAT threshold, and I hadn't accounted for it early enough. So they were like, "Oh, by the way, you owe us 40,000. I'd said to you I'd come on the retreat, and I got this bill." And I rang you up the next day saying, "Listen, mate, I'm gonna have to pull out." And you went, and that actually initially, you know what practice is. That's where the transformation began, because nobody had displayed safe, strong anger and accountability in that way to me as an adult. Not you said it in a way that I'm angry at you. You said you're going to be here. You said you're going to pay the money. Go out and make it happen. And you said it in a way that was not, "I'm pissed off at you. I want you to go away." It was, "I'm pissed off at you. I want you to step it up." And it. I remember it was like that was transformational. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so grateful for that." Even in, you know, I think even in the moment, I was like, "Oh, I need this. I need this kind of leadership. I need this." And it was like, intellectually, it wasn't a good idea to take I think it was maybe 5-6 days away from the business. It was not a good idea, but there was something deep down that said, and I had my head against the glass in the shower, and I had the headache, and I was like, there's something wrong. And the first thing that I think the practice was space and time. It was just long periods of time where there was silence and allowing me to just meditate, breathe. And I realised, and we were talking this as we were walking yesterday.
You'd never stopped until that point?
Nah, there'd never been, never. Actually, my family shadow, I was speaking to Pat DeVilliers, a good friend of, do you know Pat?
Yeah, friend of mine, yeah.
Really great guy. And actually, I interviewed him on a podcast, and he's talking about family shadow. I never heard that term before, and I was like, my family shadow was laziness.
Wow.
My family shadow is, if you're sat still, you trigger someone else in the house. It's just like, so if you're sat still, right, we're going for a dog walk. Right, we're going to go and do this. Why are you doing that? Why are you lying in? Don't be lazy. And it wasn't a negative thing. It caused so many good things in our life. But by gosh, we were just constantly on the go.
So silence, stillness, and non-doing was in your family shadow?
100%. It was so much. And for the first couple of days, it was really... There was it was hard work for me to do.
Yeah.
It was work
No
for me
shit.
to. Yeah, it was. And I was like, it was a total paradigm shift. I was like, what, people actually do this?
What else happened in the retreat that opened you up to love?
I'd never really seen the source of love being men.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've learned more and more as I've got older and wiser, is that I sound like I'm older. I've always seen myself quite young, but it's like I always thought women were the source of love. So every time I felt disconnected, I'd want to go and sleep with a woman, or go and connect with a new girlfriend, or or my partner. One of those things was my go-to in my 20s, and I actually realised that I never felt so heard and supported and loved by the masculine.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't, I had good friends, but we hadn't got to that depth, that the conversation that you facilitated. And it's so often that men turn towards the feminine for that kind of love. And actually, I heard this from Robert Glover, is that the masculine is the source of love.
Yeah.
And I heard this after, and it made more sense looking back and even talking about it now, is that there was just this group of guys, and they were just showing up, talking, open. There was some hugging, and there was some just some real opportunities to connect. And I just felt really good again. And it was definitely love. And and that was huge. That was huge. The other thing, like, we were talking about being a craftsman and watching you. So I think one of the things that I really admired about you, I was like, oh my gosh, you'd been to the tops of the sports that I loved, and you'd worked with such high level performance. But then I saw you in a yoga studio, and I was like, it didn't fit for me. I was like, what's this guy doing? Like, and it was like I was like, this is amazing. I was, like when you have a perception of someone, and you think one thing, and you're like, this whole other side to you. And I was like, wow. And the yoga and the way that you architected it, and the way it fit with the retreat, and I was like, this is a craftsman's in his craft here. And that really kind of gave me a lot of permission to go into the part of my coaching I wanted to go with clients, like the deeper stuff. I definitely won't be a yoga teacher, Craig. I'm that's not my craft, but I just loved it. And realizing how stiff I was. I was so stiff. I was so emotionally and physically stiff, and it wasn't good. I realised that, and I realised that was it was a big shift for me. So and there was something that my psychotherapist said to me about 3 or 4 years ago. He goes, "That's what men do, Ben. They stiffen up and they die." And I was like, and it was kind of like a real revelation, because my dad, and I touch my dad on the shoulder, and I give him a shoulder. It's like, he's so stiff. He holds so much in. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy that's so stiff emotionally, physically. And I realised how much that had not been on my radar. I think stiffness and muscular stiffness and being shredded and ripped was all my narrative when I was my
Me too.
Yeah, and it was like,
everything was linear.
Yeah.
Push, run, cycle, row.
Yeah. And when you say that, it's almost laughable. But I was exactly that. If I did a side bend, I would have broken.
Yeah.
It's just that was great. And then the final part was I think it was just seeing that it's not me, not just me, and I think that's the exposure.
It's not just me.
Yeah.
Shared experiences.
I believed that I was different. I had unique problems, and just hearing guys with much deeper problems and sharing them, and then me hearing these problems and going, "Oh, it's okay. It's just normal. It's just this life." And me giving them that empathy and having that in return, it made a lot of the seemingly shameful problems I had in my life just disappear. I'm like, oh, well, it's just normal guy things. So
we were speaking earlier, talking about emotional mastery, and in simple terms, feeling what you couldn't feel as a kid. And the other profound benefit of going on some kind of retreat like we did is that when you allow yourself to feel in the presence of others, and your emotional expression is held and validated by a group, for me, that is the pinnacle of any transformation, because it's likely that the emotions that you repressed growing up were not validated growing up by a group, were not validated in the family home. So processing and allowing emotions to be expressed in a retreat like that is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think this all links back to what we were talking about earlier about self-sabotage. Is to a degree, what I think is that I was so uncomfortable with so many different parts of those emotional spectrums, that range you talked about, is that as I got more successful, I would have to demonstrate those more. I would be exposed to those more. So the natural default, like a coping mechanism, was like shrink my life, stop myself from moving forwards. And I think in that context, if you think about it, it's like, if I've got a certain amount of money that I manage, a team that I manage, and that starts growing, it's default that I'm going to be exposed to, or what's the word for it, demonstrated to people, I have to be more transparent. But if I'm not okay about dealing with those feelings and showing up with those ways, I'm going to stop myself from getting there.
Yeah.
And I think that conflict was a huge one for me. Like conflict was massive. Conflict was such a bad thing in my life. Conflict meant anger. Anger meant aggression. Aggression meant violence. It was actually like anger or conflict meant violence. There was no in between in my kind of psyche. And what I realized is that I had to become way more comfortable with that escalation all the way through to and when I started to become more comfortable with that, that's when my ability to demonstrate that I'm angry and be safe in that really came through as a leader.
Yeah.
So then I can deal with much bigger problems now. I'm very, very good with being angry and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
Great.
It's made me a much better leader and parent and all sorts.
Okay. So I will eventually come to talk about how you've grown in your intimate relationships and fatherhood, because that's the real classroom of life, isn't it? But but I'd like you to share not everything, because I know how much you've done, but post-retreat until you're really committed to be a husband and a father, in that gap, what worked for you? What's really been transformational for you?
Yeah, so the first thing I realised was actually to lead a group, and that was really because after Member About Masks, and you were on your journey, and you were off to Peru and all sorts of going. Well, I went looking for men's groups, because I loved that. I loved that experience, and I was like, I need to find I need to find a place to kind of continue. And I found that we talked about this. A lot of men's groups, and this is no disrespect, they would talk in circles and not move forwards, and that was frustrating. And another one as well is I like money. I love talk about money in business, and a lot of the guys that I was meeting, they weren't my people.
Yeah.
So I was like, and this is they were just because that's where they were, and I was like, I'll go and create my men's group. I'll go and create one. But I was having this thing like, who am I to go and do that? Because I've got all these problems that I still haven't dealt with, and I realised that was exactly the reason I needed to go and do it.
For
I needed to face it. Because I can't sit there talking about how you should not watch pornography, you shouldn't have impulses and act on them, you shouldn't have infidelity, when there was things in my life that stunk of that. So I closed a lot of those gaps. So albeit that was what I was doing professionally, I had to have help to do that. So I got, psychotherapist was one of the biggest. And I like the thinking that you have as an S&C coach, which is like, you're not the coach. You surround that performer with a group of people, a physio, a nutritionist, and you probably did that in World Rugby. And what I noticed that a lot of those same people don't have that thinking. They think if it is to be, then it's up to me.
Yeah.
And I treated myself like an athlete. I had a psychotherapist, I had a bodywork specialist, I had a breathwork specialist. I had a team that I had around me to help me perform at my best. So I was almost like, that was what I was doing really early on when I wanted to be an S&C coach. And I was like, well, if I treat myself like this, where I've got all these people that help me with different things at different times, they're not all, at the same time, And that's what A, bumped up my self-development bill, but B, I had a multidisciplinary approach to transformation. The big ones was psychedelics was huge. You know, like I think for me, I was like, I'd done so much therapy, I'd done so much psychotherapy, and I was like, there's something that just needs to shift. And I hired a really good guy and did some work, and it was like the cognitive understanding of what I'd read so much about all these different models and all these different things. I felt it in my body, and I processed a lot of my childhood thinking through an adult body. That was just night and day different. The other thing was having a group of men around me to point out my blind spots, whether it's when Craig and I have met and had conversations, whether that's a men's group, whether that's getting away on a retreat. I think that there's something about having a group of quality men to say, can you see that blind spot, and in a way that you can accept it. And the final piece is, I think, is that what I do. This is a mindset I've always had. Is I find someone I really want to work with, and I go a mile deep with them. I really go really deep with them and learn from them. And I've been very lucky to have such great coaches around me for that. So yeah.
So moving into your intimate relationship, I remember one time, and I can resonate with this in my own relationships. You'd broke up and it was over, and then when I kind of connected with you again, you were back on, you were getting married, you've had 2 kids. I'm speaking to you earlier, you've grown an awful lot in that intimate relational space. How has that been for you?
God, there's an edge here for me. It's to talk on a podcast about this. Is that my default was to cheat if I wanted out of a relationship, and I probably talk about, I don't experience a mass amounts of shame, but if I was such a nice guy, I couldn't end a relationship. I'd just go and do something dumb to sabotage it. That was my default, and I think a lot of guys are the same.
Yeah.
A lot of my clients have said, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly what I do."
Yeah.
I just do something so silly that she has to finish with me. And
then we live with that lie, which eats away at our soul. I know it did for me, because I've done the same.
And I made a mistake, and I hurt myself, I hurt people, and I was like, this is not who I am. I said, I don't want to be this, but it was a pattern that was just really, it was from the past. And I remember just really seeing that there was an opportunity for Poppy and I to grow together, and that's always what I was looking for. Not just a partner who was attractive, or I wanted someone who was going to grow with me on the journey, and I could see that she was on the journey herself, and she really wanted to develop and grow. And I can't be with someone who wants to be unconscious. I've got to be with someone who's going to move with me, because the disparity is going to be huge. Because I knew that, I deeply knew that, is this person going to just stay the same, or they're going to come and grow and go deeper? And she was that woman, and I had to get over that shame. I had to get over it and face it, and that was a part of like why I wanted to get to that point where I could say I wanted to get married again. Is that I had to really understand myself and some of these sabotaging behaviours. And the biggest one was, I think it was just, once all of the superficial stuff had got old, what was there, have a much deeper relationship. And then I wanted to be a father. That was like, I knew that from 21. And I said to Poppy, like, I want to be a father. That's one of the most important things. And we made a decision to have a child, and that was everything for me. I knew, I don't know if you either know or you don't. Like, this is one of the most important things I want to do in my life, and that was transformational. That whole process, and I realised this is actually really helpful for me. Is that have you ever done the love languages stuff? And I thought that acts of service, like my dad, was love. My dad's an acts of service guy. And actually, I realised why I didn't receive as much of his love as I could have, because he wasn't in the home. So how could he give me acts of service when he wasn't in front of me doing it? And it's his, single line acts of love. And my therapist said to me, Ben, the only love that your child knows is the love they see in front of them, in their eyes. If you're out working, they don't get that that's love.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I was out in the morning 6 till 9. I was like, I'm going to have to display love differently to my kids. And that was a huge shift for me. So I wanted to be a present, loving father. That was really, really important to me. And that's been a journey. It's still going on it now.
How has fatherhood made you softer? How has fatherhood increased your capacity to feel?
We were talking about pride, and pride is a really interesting emotion for me. I come from a long line of very proud men. My dad's a proud man. He's a very proud Welshman. My Tide was a very proud man, and I always noticed that I got pride from both of them. I can see that. And I had a moment 2 days ago where I took my kids down to the athletics track and they loved it. And oh my God, the pride! I was walking around the freaking track crying. I was like, Ben, come on. It's like, but allowing myself just to allow myself to do that. And I was crying because I was so proud that they were just having a great time doing the thing that I loved. It was really interesting. And
you're also remembering the younger Ben too, right?
It was exactly that. I was going. Yeah, I was. That's very true. I was watching the sheer grit and determination of my 2-year-old running around the track, and it just, oh my God, I was gone. And I realised that a lot of the love we experience as men is through pride. That's what I kind of came to it, and I was like, gosh, it's so often we do things as kids just for our parents, especially our dad, to be proud of us. And that was a big, big driver for me. I would work so hard on the athletics track just to hear him say, do you know, I'm really proud of you running, mate. Yeah. And so what I think is you become, do you know what there's been conscious of as well is that I realised that on the same note, if my kids decide to be gamers, I've got to choose to be proud of that as well. And I thought there was it was a real conscious awareness to that. I was like, oh, I could give my kids all this pride for, being out there doing stuff. If they choose to be a coder, I've got to give them the same level of pride.
Yeah.
So it was a really interesting day.
Yeah.
And that's been a big one. And actually just feeling it, allowing myself to feel that and slowing the fuck down.
Yeah.
When I met you, I was going, and my business was called Fast Way to Fitness. I was called the Fast Coach.
Yeah.
I ran everywhere. Like I didn't walk anywhere. I ran everywhere.
Yeah.
So if
I can resonate with that when I was younger.
Yeah, I used to be. People used to take the piss out of me on the university campus that I taught on in Roseland. It's like, Ben, you're never walking anywhere. You're always running in loafers.
I could never ever walk up and down steps.
No,
I had to run.
Yeah, and it was like, and so I've just learned to slow down. And I realize there's I actually give you a situation in the morning. Every morning, my kids off to nursery. If I'm trying to race, it's like I'm rejecting the reality. They take a long time to get into the car. And if I'm saying we've got to be on time, we've got to be, and I'm getting wound up, I'm bringing a shitload of anger. And I spoke to my sister and I said, hey, I get really triggered in the morning when the kids are slow. And she said, don't you remember our childhood? It was like so much chaos and anger, and my mum shouting at us to get out the house, and I was bringing all that to my kids. And I let go of it. I said, do you know what? If we're late, we're late. And we're not late. But do you know what? There's now the experience of getting the kids in the car is so different. And it sounds very inconsequential, but I think it's not just parenting that people do that. We bring it into all areas of life, like deadlines in work. It can be on a project where when things aren't going the way we want, all of a sudden anger rushes in. And it's not the right tool. It can be the worst tool.
Yeah.
And I can see that with my clients as well. So I was like, oh, do you know, is anger your default weapon when you got a deadline? Oh yeah, it's my go-to.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And how has fatherhood transformed the way you coach?
Oh, that's a great. I'm way more empathetic. You know, I think that I had a guy shame me once. That he goes, "Oh, you'll understand when you're a father." He goes, "You won't get you don't understand it because you don't have kids." And I got really triggered. I was like, "How dare you?" You know, and probably triggered because I wanted kids and I didn't have them at that point in my life. And he said, "Oh," and I made I made him an offer, and he said, "Oh, I can't do it because I've got kids." And you know, money goes for the kids, and that wasn't the thing. It was that I didn't understand him. I think in that session he probably didn't feel understood.
Yeah.
And as a young 25-year-old, how could I understand that?
Of course.
And you realise how difficult it is. The bandwidth just is sapped up by the you spend some time with the kids. You can't multitask. You can't do other things. So I've become way more understanding. So the second thing I've become more boundaried. I think that we talked about you modelling great things in your life. The only way that Poppy and I have been able to grow businesses the way that we have and be present parents is the quality of the boundaries that we have. No being no, and no being no phones at the dinner table, no communication outside.
Great to hear that.
Yeah, not even at the dinner table. I have to have my phone away because I think that one of the biggest problems I had, I was a guy that talked about boundaries but didn't have them. Poppy has boundaries. It's black and white. She's very black and white. You know, it's like hard no. And even though I talked about them, I even taught boundaries, but I wasn't practicing in my own life. I was so out of integrity. And as soon as the kids rocked up, it was like when they're there, you know, in your care at 3 o'clock, it's a no to everything else. It's a no because my time with them is really important. So it did a lot of good for me because I realised that my time was more valuable. So my fees went up as well. So, you know, kind of...
Yeah.
And I sometimes thought, I was like, here's my time. You're going to have to pay for my time a little bit more because it's so valuable for my children at that time or so valuable in that part of my day. Or so my fees went up as well, which is, you know, it's great. And I attract great clients because of that. And also I attract more parents as well.
Wonderful. Mate, if your life was a blockbuster movie and the audience are on the edge of the seat right now because they can see quite clearly what they want you to jump into in the next phase of your life, what are they screaming at the screen?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I thought you were going to ask me what's the title of the movie. And I was like, I had it in my head ready. It's like,
what they're saying, Ben, come on, Ben, do it.
I think mine's Show Up. You know, I actually have a narrative. I'm like the best kept secret. It's quite a bit of a bad narrative. It's like a lot of my clients say, Ben, you're my best kept secret. I'm like, I don't want to be. It's just like, Show Up is definitely one. You know, start to stand on stages and do more things and show up in. Is it Show Yourself from Frozen? I think it's Frozen. Yeah, my kids watch Frozen all the time. And I think it's either Moana or Frozen. And there's a song called Show Yourself. It's like, is it Show Yourself?
I think I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, I'll find it. It's just like, it's that. It's because I find sometimes I just spend time coaching my clients. I'm in my office all day. And I need to do more things like this where I'm getting out and about. You know, I'd really. So if you listen to this podcast and you want me to speak, I'll happily do that. I love speaking and I love sharing and I love coaching. And I think sometimes my predisposition, especially since having kids, is to kind of just be in my home and because I used to be every day in front of loads of clients, and then I've kind of gone back into this kind of. So they're probably screaming. You know, I'd love to hear a bit more.
Yeah, great. Can you share with the audience what you've got going on at the moment from a coaching perspective and what you're creating?
Yeah, well, Craig's involved in this. I wanted to develop something called the Masterful Leadership University. It's a university where people would get exposed to the greatest leaders in the world, and that, you know, Craig was first on my list, and Craig's going to be one of the master classes on there. And I wanted to get people in a room who were just phenomenal leaders, and a lot of the value come from the quality of the people in the room. And I also wanted to have it in Dubai because Dubai is such a great place for leadership. It's a great place for opulence and money, and it's a great place for experiences as well. There's some great experiences I do with clients over there, and I wanted to grow that to be my thing. You know, I'm putting all my effort as I've finished a lot of other projects, so I can go all in on that and develop it to something that's going to be really powerful. And then Craig and I over breakfast this morning talked about a pop-up event in Dubai as well. And
radical self-leadership.
yeah, because I think it's there. You know, there's so many great things happening in the Middle East at the moment, and there's a drought of great high performing leaders that, you know, like yourself and me showing up there as well. So I want to bring that to that area, and then also just coaching my clients. You know, that's something I do day to day.
Wonderful. And where can my viewers and listeners find more about you, mate?
I think the best place to find me is at coachbenjaminowen.com, and I'm on all the social channels, and I send you the links, Craig.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I like to hang out on there.
Wonderful. Well, mate, is there anything you'd like to share before we log off?
No, just I think the main one's the gratitude. You know, I'm really grateful to you, Craig. I've watched you and modelled you, and it's always a pleasure to. But I think it comes back to that notion that, you know, that meeting you back in Phil's wedding. You know, gosh, how many years ago? How much value we've brought each other. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's also a pleasure, mate, and I'm grateful to you. Wishing you a safe journey to London, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you, buddy.